Imagine this, a perfect weekend getaway. A couple looking to escape the hustle and bustle of city life, deciding to take the road less traveled. No specific destination, just them, the open road, and the promise of peace. What begins as the ideal escape soon spirals into a nightmare beyond belief. Sometimes, the road less traveled is the one you should never take. Claire and James were excited. They packed their bags and hit the road, leaving behind their hectic lives for a few days of tranquility. The route was unmarked, a quiet country road that promised solitude. As the sun began to set, they noticed the world around them change. The lush fields and bright skies faded as the road twisted through darkening woods. "It's beautiful out here," Claire remarked, gazing out the window. James smiled, keeping his eyes on the road. The further they drove, the fewer signs of life they saw. The occasional house, isolated and run down, stood eerily in the distance. James made a comment about how old and forgotten the area seemed, but Claire dismissed it. "Let's just keep going," she said. "This is exactly what we need." But as the minutes stretched on, something began to feel off. The road was no longer smooth. Potholes and rough patches started to make their journey uncomfortable. Claire suggested they pull over to stretch their legs. They found a small clearing by the side of the road. The trees loomed like giants, casting long shadows that stretched into the darkness. As Claire stepped out of the car, she felt a chill creep down her spine. James walked ahead, his flashlight illuminating the path. But Claire stayed behind for a moment, gazing into the thick woods. She thought she saw movement, a figure, or was it just a trick of the light? "James, wait!" Claire called, suddenly feeling uneasy. But when she turned around, he was already too far to hear her. She turned back toward the woods, her heart racing. Something was watching her. Suddenly, James came running back. "We need to leave. Now." Claire didn't ask questions. They rushed back to the car, feeling the growing pressure of an unseen presence. James started the engine, and the headlights illuminated the road ahead. But as the car pulled away, Claire glanced in the rearview mirror. In the distance, just beyond the tree line, two pale faces stared back at her. They didn't speak for the rest of the drive. As the hours passed, they reached what they thought was the end of the road. A small town lay ahead, its few buildings lit up by dim streetlights. But as they drove through, something didn't feel right. There were no people, no movement, just silence. They passed abandoned houses, the windows dark, the streets eerily empty. "We should find a place to stay for the night," Claire suggested, her voice tinged with anxiety. James nodded, but when he tried to turn down a side street, the GPS froze. His phone had no signal. They tried another route, and another, but no matter which way they went, they ended up back at the same place. The quiet, desolate town. "We're stuck," James said, a cold edge to his voice. The hairs on the back of Claire's neck stood up. That's when they noticed it. At the far end of the street, a figure appeared, standing motionless in the shadows. Claire squinted, trying to make out the details, but the figure didn't move. Then, as if sensing their gaze, it stepped forward, revealing an expressionless face and eyes too dark to be natural. James slammed the gas pedal, driving faster and faster, but the town never ended. The same street, the same buildings, no matter how much they tried to escape. And always, in the distance, that figure following them. By now, Claire and James were terrified, their minds racing as they tried to make sense of what was happening. They hadn't encountered any other cars for miles. The feeling of being completely alone in an unfamiliar place was suffocating. Suddenly, the road turned sharply to the right. They were forced to stop at a narrow bridge, its wooden planks creaking under the weight of the car. As James inched forward, Claire noticed something strange. Along the edge of the bridge were small, discarded objects. Old shoes, clothes, and even torn pieces of paper with strange symbols scrawled on them. "What is this?" she whispered. James didn't answer. His attention was focused on the bridge ahead. But as the car made it halfway across, the engine sputtered and died. The headlights flickered, then went out completely, plunging them into darkness. In the pitch-black darkness, Claire heard it, a low growl, deep and guttural. Her breath caught in her throat as the sound grew louder, closer, and then, from the shadows, something emerged, a figure, tall and thin, with long, bony arms, moving unnaturally fast. James reached for the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. The figure was too close now, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. Claire screamed, but no sound came from her mouth, as if the very air had thickened. Just as the figure reached the car, the engine roared back to life. James slammed his foot on the gas, and they sped away, never looking back. But as they drove off, Claire caught a glimpse in the rearview mirror. The figure stood at the end of the bridge, watching them, its hollow eyes reflecting the headlights of the car. Have you ever experienced anything like this? Share your story in the comments below. And remember, stay safe.